If you're struggling with your vitality, energy, mood, focus, or sleep, this podcast is for you. Your host, Dr. Tsung, ER doctor and aerospace flight surgeon, will help you reach for the stars and remove the barriers or blockades that have been holding you back from living your best life. If you've been challenged by your health, relationships, or productivity, then it's time for a breakthrough. So here's your host, Dr. Tsung.
Hello, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science Show, and I am your host, Dr. Tsung. Today, I have here our guest, Valerie Maksym. I will let her introduce herself, but she is an amazing mom. She is also a coach. We're going to be discussing on self-worth and authenticity as well. And also she's going to be sharing with you her journey throughout her life and how she came about to realize her superpower, even going through a bodybuilding competition. So please, Valerie, thank you for being on the show. And please tell the audience a little bit about you.
Thank you for having me on, Anne. I really appreciate having me on. A little bit about myself. I don't know about some people that go through life, but I got to about 46 years old and I realized, I didn't even know who I was, much less, and I found this out after my second divorce, whenever I went through some life coaching and I was asked the basic questions of life that we should all be able to answer. And I sat there and I really couldn't authentically answer. I knew what I should say because I knew how I had been programmed to speak, but I didn't really know what I would say if I was given, now I'm on my own, right? So now I have my own opportunity to speak and I didn't know. So I really knew at about 45, 46 years old, I was like, oh, wow, I don't even know who I am, or much less the real me. And on my journey of finding myself, I realized that, I lived an entire life from relationship to relationship, just being who that person wanted me to be, just living for that person. Like what they liked, I would figure out, and then I would somehow like, and just going through life like that. And I've realized, taking these last 7 years off to just take a time out for myself and to really understand me and figure out, why. Why did I allow the things I allowed to happen in my life? Why didn't I stand up for myself? Why don't I know myself better? All those questions that were just coming into my head at the time, I just couldn't figure it out. I'm living in my head, just very almost depressed, just very this should not be how life is lived out. It shouldn't be this way.
Would you please clarify for the audience, what does it actually mean to not knowing who you're supposed to be? Because some people may not even know they're not living their authentic life, or may not even know.
I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought, okay, I had my first marriage, that didn't work out, my second marriage. And, I thought, I'm just living my life and I'm being me. And even my kids, as they grew older, they would even question me, Mom, that's not who you are. They could even pick up on things. And what are you talking about? You're you don't love that. You don't this. I can just tell you're not happy. They were picking up on it, that I wasn't myself. And my last marriage, I was in counseling. We were in counseling for about 10 years. And even the counselor brought me back in after I divorced and just said, he really wanted me to find me, because he's you don't know who you are. And so before you go jump into another relationship, I would recommend you figure out who you are. And at that time, it didn't just all come together in one thing, right? It was one little thought here, one little thought there. And so it wasn't all of this happened at once. It was definitely a journey of figuring out that I didn't know who I was, that I didn't even know that life could even be the way that it is now, just on these little steps of trying to figure out, because I lived for somebody else to validate me. Whatever that was. I validated others. I love so big, when they said self-love, I'm oh my gosh, I have so much self-love because I love so big. I don't think anybody can love bigger than I love. Those in my family, I give to them, I support them, I'm their cheerleader, I'm there for them. It's all in. But the missing piece was I was looking for other people in relationships to love me, to validate me. And so that's the part that I was missing. And I just was, in life, I was just even really upset and just frustrated at the end of kind of my wit's end, I give and I give and I give and I do and I do and I do. And these men do the same things to me over and over again. And I was really angry, angry at God, the world. I was angry at everybody. I was just angry, just mad. This is not how life should be, because they always say what you give out, you get back. And it's okay, all I've given is good and love and honesty. And this is not what I'm getting back. So just had to really do some soul searching too, to like, why did I allow what I allowed? I was the common denominator in all that mess. And it's like, why did I allow myself to even be treated like that? Why did I allow someone to talk to me like that? Why did I think I was less than, So when I'm saying not knowing myself, by not knowing myself, I didn't have boundaries. And so anybody could treat me however they wanted to, because I just didn't want to lose them. Like I didn't want to lose, that friendship or that relationship. So I had no boundaries. So I just took the crumbs, whatever I could have. And I found that by not knowing myself and allowing the crumbs, I wasn't even attracting the right people in my life, the right opportunities, the right people, the right friendships, the right everything, because I'm basically an imposter. Like I'm not me. I'm being who I've been told to be, maybe from childhood to my, first marriage, second marriage. I'm living out who I thought I was supposed to be. So by doing that, I'm attracting the things in life, because we attract, our energy attracts like-minded, they say like birds of a feather flock together. And there's certain sayings, right? You kind of like attract who you are. And I realized looking back, wow, no wonder I wasn't getting or having the things that I wanted, because I wasn't even being myself. So I wasn't even attracting the right things into my life.
So it sounds like you had some toward values, you had some away values that you didn't recognize at the time, maybe, and you didn't stand up for your values because you didn't realize that that was you at the time. Is that what it was? And so you were letting other people dictating what your values should be, what you should be doing, what you should be saying, how you should act. And then you didn't really stand up to draw boundaries with your kids, maybe with your husband at the time, with your friends and family.
Right. And yeah, I would say that for sure, just not having, when I was on this 7-year journey that I went through, when I wrote my book on my 7-year journey, I realized the one thing that I was looking for that I had no clue was self-love, because I was looking for all the things that self-love gives us. I was looking for somebody else to give me. And I realized that's impossible. It's impossible. I mean, we think that and it sounds good, but your relationship with yourself is an extension to every other relationship you have in life. So if that's not good and you don't know who you are, it's really hard to expect, to have the best. You can have good relationships, but it's hard to expect those great relationships you want and all that when you don't even really have the foundation of who you are. And so that's, another thing that in my journey, I figured that out.
And what did you do exactly? Like through like a quick, I know it's like a 7-year journey.
Right.
In a quick, like milestone, what exactly happened that led you to actually discover self-love, to not really care about what other people think? Because it's very common, even in medicine, the professional world, that we often have imposter syndrome. We think we're not as good as we are, who we are. And we rely on other people's validation of us, how we do, like say, for example, if consultants in the hospital say something poorly about our decision, a lot of times we take it poorly because we think that that specific comment reflects on us as a character, as a person, actually, whereas it could just be a lesson learned, really. It doesn't reflect us as a person. So I'm curious to know, what exactly did you do the 7 years that led you to get there, to discover self-love?
For me, I just think it was first acknowledging it. I had to acknowledge it because, like I said, this journey was long, and it's going to be different for other people. And it doesn't have to be as long for people, but for me, it was. And I think when you acknowledge it and you start seeking things, like I started reading books, I had my life coach. And so, she was asking me questions like, what are your hobbies? Well, I don't have hobbies. What do you mean hobbies? Like, who has time for hobbies? What do you want me to, And so I had to start finding a hobby. And, I did running, and I did the Houston Marathon. I ran the full, which was a big accomplishment, but it just wasn't my thing. So but I tried it, right? So I did it, tried tennis. That wasn't my thing, tried a few things. And then I remembered, I had always wanted to do bodybuilding competitions back when I was a gymnast, and a friend was doing one. And so I started 5 years ago doing bodybuilding competitions. And I think that helped my confidence. That was for me, that was an outlet. That was pushing myself to extremes and then seeing where I could, grow from that, because I grew through every show. You're building self-confidence. You're, without even realizing it, you're building it. You're getting stronger. Your, confidence, they say, is like a muscle. You have to, work on it and build it. And so I think by those little things, it really helped me to start realizing, wait a minute, like I do matter. I am valuable. I started speaking out my positive affirmations. When I spoke with my life coach, she had me say things out loud like, I am beautiful. I couldn't say those words. I mean, I couldn't even say those words. It was not even, I was like, I am, like, it was the weirdest thing. I cannot explain it to you. And I even coach women and I asked them to say that. And I will tell you 9 times out of 10, they can't say it. And it's very sad because women are beautiful. I don't care who you are. I truly believe that beauty starts within. And that's why one of my slogans is that I really teach on is unleash your inner superhero. And what I mean by that is like, just think of like this rocket of the true you just firing up and the fire's going, the smoke, and you're just launching out, like you're just going for it. You're just like not afraid to be just to be authentically yourself. Like back when you were 8, 10, 12 years old and you're a kid at home and you're just twirling around the kitchen, singing, your clothes don't match. You're just being you, right? You're laughing. You're not thinking what people think of you or judging you, but just being able to just truly be. And, I had to think about, why did I stop being like that? What happened? And it just happens naturally a lot of times by maybe your parenting, the way you were parented, maybe, the teachers you're around, it just slowly, a lot of times our true self gets squashed in there because so many times we're our true self and we're vulnerable and we get hurt. And so we get hurt by being vulnerable that we're like, ooh, okay, not doing that again. Walls start going up. Like, okay, that wasn't good. That wasn't a good outcome. And before we know it, we're not ourselves, we're not letting, the true us come out and shine. So really trying to help people, like my whole thing on Maksymizing Life is just trying to help people to even realize possibly they're not even living their authentic, true, best life, right? Because it's got to start there. If they think, oh yeah, there could be more, that's a start. And I'm just like, when you start, it's like one thing after the other. I'll listen to podcasts or I'll listen to a podcast. There's a book on there and I'll get the book or I'll listen to it. And I don't really know. It's like things just always keep building. People are like, how did you get here so fast? Every day I'm investing in myself on some level of, mindset and, belief. And, belief is everything. Belief and mindset. If you can get somebody to believe in themselves and change their mindset, they can change. There's nothing they can't do.
Yeah, I completely resonate with that because in terms of like it being built up from childhood, because the way I grew up in Taiwan and with my mother, it's always about academics. And I don't have the camera pointing there, but on this wall, there's like literally multiple certifications on going through residency training. And I did 2 fellowships after that. It's always like, my goal was to strive for success, for more education, more certificates, so that was like my way of obtaining self-worth and how I feel successful. And really, honestly, it's probably subconsciously how I obtained my mom's approval and love. And even after I realized that, it took a while, a few years to even change my definition of self-worth. Like I don't have to necessarily, have all the certifications, but I went to the Tony Robbins like Date with Destiny. And so I changed this, okay, I will be present. But then that's still a goal, in order to feel like you're worthy. So I went to 40 years of Zen. After that, a 5-day long meditation. And finally, I came out with, all I have to do is to be myself.
Yeah, exactly. Just be. Yeah. It sounds so simple. I love that. I love that because that's what I say. It just sounds so simple. But when you don't know what it's just like, just be. It's not right or wrong. And if you do something that you feel like is wrong, it's not really wrong. It's a learning moment. So next time you do it better. So you can't be afraid of failure. You have to just be. Just be.
Yeah. How would you say, like, after your bodybuilding competition, was there anything else that you did that allowed you to be completely, fully authentic and really not care about what other people say or do and have full confidence in yourself? So in other words, like any other techniques or, anything you can share with the audience, how they can find their superpower and lean into that?
I really just had to take some time to just be with myself. Like some friendships just went away. And they're not bad people by any means. It just wasn't, they weren't to go on my journey. We say people come in our life for a reason, a season, some don't stay forever. So we can't get so attached because sometimes where we need to go to our next level in life, the people that are surrounding us aren't going to get us there. Nothing wrong with them, but they don't have that mindset. They're naysayers. They'll tell you why you can't do things. And so when you want to just unleash and to be, you really have to find people that are further ahead in life than you. they've done the things you want to do. So they know that they can believe in you, right? Because they've done it. So it's a lot easier when they always say you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. You always want to be, learning and growing and pushing your boundaries and getting out of your comfort zone. And like, I started doing little things. Like I went to kind of like you went to Date with Destiny. I didn't go to that, but I went to something in California. And when they spoke there, they were like, I was always the person that stayed in the back row. I listened. I mean, I took everything in, but I always stayed in the back. I never asked questions, even though I knew the answer. I never. And one of the things I took away from that session was, and I will never forget this, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, that my voice matters. And I need to stand up because people do need to hear. And I sat in the front at that event and I raised my hand and I answered questions, all the things out of my comfort zone. So, sometimes we have to also intentionally live our life every day with the intentions of, okay, the person that I wanted to become, the person I was 3 years ago and the person I know I wanted to become, I knew I had to change my habits and my ways of doing things if I was ever going to become that person. I want to become this person that's, a world-renowned speaker. I'm on public stages all over the world speaking, empowering people, having a movement of maximizing life. What does that mean? Really being able to speak into people's life like fire, like it just talks to their soul where they're like, oh my gosh, like, I want that, I want my, the person I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I could have never even thought about doing that, and the person I'll be next year will be different than this year because I'm constantly investing. As you go to these things like Tony Robbins, you invest in yourself because you're the best investment you can have is in yourself. And a lot of people don't want to spend the money on themselves, but they'll spend it in everything else. And it's like, if you could just realize how much love and happiness when you can really get you figured out. I heard someone talking just yesterday and they were really pounding like how they're, telling people what they need to do. And it was in a family situation, you need to do this. And then they were like, they stopped and like, you know what? And I don't remember the whole exact story, but they didn't even know themselves. And it's like, they were talking amongst themselves. And it was interesting listening, like when we don't even know who we truly are ourselves to the core and our happiness, but yet we want to tell other people what to do and how to be, you know what I'm saying? So it was like a good lesson for me too, like not listening to what other people always say, because I know that's kind of a roundabout what you were talking about earlier, but a lot of times when you're around people that aren't the best for you, they might have the best intentions when they're saying, I had so many people tell me writing a book's a dumb idea. You should never do that. Why would you want to speak on stages? Why do you want to do that? I've had that from multiple people. And those are people that were in my life at that time. And it was really hard to write a book because then when I would get hard, I would have an excuse to quit. Oh yeah, well, they don't think I should do this anyways. This is not a good idea. But in my heart, I knew I had to write this book. I've known for 20 years I need to write a book, but it was this internal war. And then when I finally just let everybody just go to the side and just really realize, I got to figure out what makes me happy at the end of the day. And it's not selfish, because when you're the happiest you can be, you are better for your spouse, your loved ones, your children, your people that you work with. There's nothing, worse than having to sit next to someone at work all day that's negative and unhappy. And because it does, like one bad apple spoils the bag. So it's like, you have to remember that, it's so important to keep the energy good, the focus good, where we focus, where we go. And it's not easy. It's a daily thing. So when you're saying, how did I get there? It is every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not doing something to invest in myself.
Yeah, there's so many things to unpack there because number one, nobody's going to look out for you as much as you look out for yourself. Everybody else, honestly, they're looking out for themselves. They're busy thinking about themselves. Even if they make a negative comment or feedback about what you're doing, the next 5-10 minutes, really, they're kind of worried, they're going down their own spiral, thinking about their lives.
Right.
And then another thing is that, and so one reason why I remove need or should from my vocabulary, talking about myself or even talking to other people, because you don't ever need or should do anything. And you shouldn't, you wouldn't tell people that you should do something or you need to do this, you need to do this, because everybody has a choice and you have a choice. So the wording that, we commonly use, or I changed it to, is I will, or I choose to. So yes. If you're talking to other people, try to remove that word you need or you should.
Yeah.
And then if you're talking to yourself too, I should have I should work out, or I should have woken up earlier, or, don't do the negative self-talk and just say, I
Right.
will wake up.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties into self-worth too. Every time you talk about have negative self-talk, that just like you let an action define your self-worth, essentially, and let you feel terrible for the day.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And like I said, you're always going to do mess ups, or, maybe one day you might say something like that and then like catch yourself. But the thing is, you're growing on a journey. Like, when we first start out, we'll mess up and we'll say negative things we shouldn't say. But like you said, be mindful of it every day. Just, you'll keep getting better and better at, because some people I know are like, oh, I'm so negative, I could never do that. Well, yes, you could. You could if you want to, right? It's a choice if you choose to. But when we do mess up, we can't be so hard on ourselves. We have to realize, okay, tomorrow's a new day. Let's dust ourselves off, reset, and let's go again.
Yeah. And don't label yourself, because a lot of times I hear I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert, I'm just not a good speaker, I'm not a good writer. You can. Everybody can. With practice, with coaching, with knowledge, you can really do anything that you want. It's just a matter of prioritization. And so to kind of recap, so first, of course, you have to acknowledge that you have lost yourself, or perhaps you're not your authentic selves, or not as authentic as you could be, or haven't drawn boundaries as much as you could be. Number two, start, investing yourself, in education, in perhaps some sort of visual meditation or visualization, or go to some of the events that kind of help you identify those thought process or the negative thought process. And number three, make sure that you're looking at your surroundings, and make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right peers who are encouraging you and not bringing you down, who see the possibilities in you, who see how limitless you are, and who even identify your superpower for you because you've lost yourself. So I think like that kind of goes into like in terms of how to actually identify the superpower. A lot of times people just don't even know what their passion is. I don't know what I'm good at. I hear that a lot. I don't know what to do. So they're just kind of stuck in their current work. Or like, what would you say to them? Like, what should they do?
I mean, for myself, I was in that spot. I got a life coach. I invested in it, and I had divorced. I didn't have the money, but I didn't care. It was like, I knew I had to know. I had to figure myself out. So I just took the leap, and I literally maxed out like my last credit card to do it. And at the time, anybody else that was, not for me would have thought, what are you doing? But it was the best decision looking back that I could have ever made, because it changed the entire trajectory of my life. Because how do you know if somebody's not willing to sit down? Because there's many processes you can go through to figure out your passions, your reason for being here, and in unpacking it in a way that you can start working towards it in multiple facets of ways. I mean, it doesn't have to be a full-time job. It could be a hobby you do. It could be something you do for volunteer things. Like there's so many things that, some people I know several people that got their passion in volunteering because they didn't need to work. It wasn't like they didn't have to, go get a job and work. And just by volunteering those couple hours a week in their passion, it's literally changed everything about their life.
From your clients, because you do coaching as well. I'm curious to know, because I want people to be able to imagine, because a lot of times you don't know what's possible. Yeah. So what is it before, when they haven't found their passion, when they've lost themselves, when they're not being authentic, when they're letting other people define their self-worth, versus after going through this process? What is their life actually? What does it actually look like, feel like? I just want to see kind of the end goal, where people can be.
I have several different people I can bring up and talk about, but, some people don't even know what life coaching is. So basically life coaching is I get on Zoom, and it's an hour of space for a person to think and talk. And I always say a good life coach is like a good attorney. I listen and I ask the questions. So they figure out their own issues, right? Like, or not issues, but their own answers, because I'm asking the questions and they're talking, and then they get these aha moments like, oh, so, but I've had a couple. So when they come in, every person I coach is different. Like I have my main foundation of my framework, but I really listen to where they're at today and where they're wanting to get to. I've had people that have been in abusive relationships where that's all they've known. Like their parents were abusive, their mom was abusive, their dad was abusive. It's all they ever knew. And so like every relationship they had was abusive. And so really changing that mindset, because what would happen is they would get into relationships that were normal, and it would scare them, because normal is scary because they're not used to that. They want comfort. And even though it was dysfunctional, they would go back to what was comfortable, what they would know. And so changing their mindset. So I've had people come out of just really, relationships. And now they look at it and they're like, I would never, like they know themselves and now they can see it. And when we talk, they're like, oh, this almost happened, but I picked this up and I'm doing this. And, they're healthier because they're learning to love themselves, care for themselves, have boundaries, see, the difference. So their life is just so much different, so much more rewarding. And it also flows over into their work. This one owns their own business and things went from being slow at work and thinking about closing it down because, this is slow, her life wasn't good. But once she started figuring her out and, getting that figured out, then her business started changing because we don't realize the energy we put off. Like, so as a business owner, she didn't realize the energy she's putting off to people who are working for her. And then they quit work, some quit working there. And it all ties together, right? It's the whole big thing that we don't see how everything intertwines. It's just so important to really be, solid in knowing yourself. And I have another one that I started with, and I think she's in her mid 60s. And, she just was the same thing, just gone through her whole life and lots of passions, just never really did anything. Started writing a book like I don't remember, it was 7 years ago, but never did anything with it. Just lots of things in life she never finished up. And so by coaching, we were to sit down and, find out what was important to her. And she got a lot of these projects finished. She has someone that came in and published her book for her. And, and she's like on her path of doing volunteer work because she doesn't have to work. And so there's just so many different scenarios. And I even life coached my kids, which that was an amazing thing for a parent to say. My kids are 32, 30, 28, and 20, and to say that I made a lot of bad decisions as a parent, and to know that my kids said, okay, I'll let you life coach. And we did it through Zoom. So it wasn't like in the same room, but we did it through Zoom. And all my kids, one day I want to have my kids on for them to share, because where they went from, I've had kids on drugs and alcohol and just like wanting to commit suicide, trying to commit suicide. My kids have been through so much to see where they were at because of my decisions in my relationships. I really hurt them, although they're still, they have to own their own thing. But by coaching them today, every single one of my kids are working and they're happy and they're healthy and they're providing for themselves. And, it's just such an amazing thing to see what coaching could do, because coaching is, there's no judgment. Because as a good life coach, I stay out of it. I'm just asking your questions. There's no, it's, you have your answers within you, but I've got to try to ask the right questions to get them out of you.
And so what are some questions that the audience can ask themselves after this episode to kind of figure out their authenticity, figure out their superpower? What are some of the questions that are often not asked because we don't often sit down and actually think about it?
Some of the questions are, you have to ask yourself, am I codependent? That's a big thing of not being able to find that superpower when you're codependent. Can I make decisions on my own, or do I have to be with another person, to start there? To ask themselves things like, if they didn't have to work, like if money was not the issue, what would they be doing? Like what line of work would you be doing? Like if it wasn't based on the money you're bringing in, because it doesn't mean that you can't do something in that field, because maybe it's painting. Maybe it's something that really isn't going to bring you in a full income to support your family, but figuring some things out that you can, start pouring your passion into. I have someone that loves making woodwork. And so, just getting into that and when you're doing something you love and you're able just to start being truly you, creative, whatever that looks like, it just starts building confidence, like even if it's a table and you're getting to use your creativity and your ideas and your things, and you make it and then somebody wants to buy it. Like, it's like, wow, but yet that's not it's full-time job, but it's just, there's things like that. So you're just asking yourself, like I said, if I didn't get paid for this, like what are the things that I love doing? And then why am I not doing them? Why am I not stepping out? Or what could I do? What could I do to, put myself a little bit closer to doing something with that? Maybe someone loves painting. Start, getting out some paintbrushes and paint in the evening instead of watching TV or being on your phone. Like just get your creative juices going again, because I think we live in this society so much that we're so technology, we're in so much technology that we don't know what we don't know, because we don't even take the time to even see the possibilities of what things can be.
Yeah, I think we often forget what we used to love because of the rat race and the never ending loop that we're in a day. Because, I've done the one thing you can think about is like, what is the one activity or something you love reading about that you forget to go to the restroom, you forget to pee, you forget to poop. And that is the activity that you love, or that is the subject that you're engrossed in.
If you love cooking, but you don't cook because you're so busy, maybe you have a couple kids and your husband's working, you're working, maybe once a week, find a time that you and your kids and you make a recipe and you cook together, because that builds, it just makes you feel good because you're doing what you love. And then you're sharing it with your kids and you're teaching them. So it's a teaching moment as well, a bonding moment. And then you feel better as like, okay, I'm a mom that works all the time and I don't get to see my kids a lot, but now I'm doing my passion, which I absolutely love, cooking or baking or whatever. And I'm going to once a week do this with my kids and my family. And then, we'll have a nice dinner together. There's just so many different ideas of things that you can do. But like we said, we don't take the time out to think about, what would make you happy? What would, if you knew that you only had 30 days to live, what would you do? What would make you happy? What would be something that, you're like, wow, I want to do that. I want to try that. I'm all about trying new things. I have a whole list of things like this going into this next year. I have a whole list of things I want to try. I want to learn Spanish. So that's another thing I have on my thing, but I've been saying that for years. So now I'm like, okay, no, this year I want to learn Spanish. I'm terrified of heights. I'm going to go skydiving, and that's going to be like overcoming my biggest fear. And, getting outside your comfort zone, that's where growth happens. It's scary. And not everybody has to do things that are that extreme. But I think if you can daily figure out on some level how to get out of your comfort zone, whether you're at work and you're at a boardroom meeting and you never speak up, start saying something, just do little things that might scare you, but that will really start building a self-confidence. And by doing that, then you slowly start building that confidence. It's like a muscle you're building, and then all of a sudden you're starting to get confidence where you're more and more confident to allow that inner superhero that lives within you, that you're scared to people to see that real you. You get to a point that you're like, whatever. Okay, this is me. This is who I am. Okay, guys, you don't like it. You don't like it. This is who I am, and just being okay with that. Like for a long time, I stayed away from wanting to speak and write my book because I have to really work more than the average person to overcome ADD. I'm not going to sit here and put a stigma on myself, but I really have to overcome because words will go backwards on me. I'll say things backwards. I will be talking and I will literally go blank. Or I totally don't even know what I was saying to you. And that's embarrassing when you're talking and that really happens. But I've had to realize I'm going to be authentic. This is me when it happens. And it has happened when I've been speaking in front of people. Okay, guys, I just had a moment and I'm being real with you. We're going to get back on track here in a second because I just completely went blank. I watched that girl go out the back door and she had this really cute dress on and I totally forgot what I was saying, but just even being okay in uncomfortable moments. And I think the more you can just realize this is who I am. This is me. I'm not going to let what I would call my limitations hold me back.
Yeah. Accept that you are human. If you didn't have those moments, if you didn't have those fears, forgetfulness or ADD or anything, anxiety, all human fears and emotions are universal. That's what I realized at 40 years of Zen. And to not accept you being human, you're a robot, essentially, right? So I can identify what you're talking about in terms of embracing your authenticity, because before I started the podcast, it was like 2 years, 1 year to think about it.
Yeah.
Just 1 year just to think about it. And then finally 1 year to actually take the action because I was so scared what other people might think about what I wanted to talk about. And now I've gotten to the point where it doesn't really matter because, my intention is to share what I know to the world. And if just one person can take away one little piece or one sentence from what we talked about, then it would have met my purpose for the world. And it is who I am. And, what you're saying is who you are. It doesn't really matter what other people think. Life is too short to really care.
You just start small and you don't overthink it. Like some people are like, well, I don't have gifts. I don't have talents. You start so small. You just start because we all have them and you just start small and you'll be surprised when you just start doing the things that make you happy and bring you joy, that over time you'll start seeing that your gifts and talents start developing and then you start, using them and walking in them, because it is really sad to look around and you just go to the mall or just look at people and just wonder like, are all these people really using their gifts and talents that they were given, like naturally given to have? Or many of them don't even know what they are because they've never tried. They're too scared to get out of their comfort zone and try. Like if I was too scared to get out of my comfort zone and try to be a speaker and to talk, then the things that I talk on, I wouldn't be touching and helping these people that like people write me and the things they tell me. It's like, okay, that's definitely not me. I mean, it's like, the energy like working through me, like, it's like the words are speaking to people and I'm thankful for them. Like I'm happy that it's helping them. But had I not just said, going to go for it. And like I said, it started small. I would never have even thought about writing a book or getting out and speaking and getting on stages. I mean, that's like the biggest fear in the world, they say, is like getting in public speaking, that's like one of the biggest fears. But how many people don't even know because they're too scared to even try. So when I talk to people, I'm like, I like to sit down with them and just baby steps with it. And, you built that mindset. And once you get that mindset and that belief going, and that's why you were asking with the people I've helped, you get that mindset and belief going, lining up to their passion, the sky's the limit. I mean, I see people just take off. It just takes a little bit of time in the beginning, kind of like getting the momentum going, just kind of getting all the little pieces there and together. And once that happens and they get it, it's like, look out, they're unstoppable.
So to summarize the kind of the questions to ask, in order to get themselves there, number one, are you codependent? Are you being your full authentic self? Are you drawing boundaries or not? And number two, if you only had 30 days to live, or what would you want to do the next 30 days? And another exercise actually that you reminded me that was pretty great when I did it is you imagine your funeral, actually. You imagine your friends and family coming up to speak about you. What would they be saying, ideally? Yes. Who you are, what you've done, how you affected and impacted the world around you. And so just think about that and then do it. You don't need to wait. You don't need to wait.
Because you don't want to get to the end of your life and have all these regrets. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, and I didn't because so-and-so didn't think I should, or so-and-so didn't believe in me. Because if you're waiting for someone to believe in you or somebody to tell you should do this or somebody, it's never going to happen because we have to realize what's placed within you, what's placed within me, what's placed within you, what's placed within the listeners is all different. So you can't go by somebody telling you should or shouldn't do that. You have to really listen to your internal gut instinct and go with it. Just go for it.
And it is, for you to share your authenticity to the world, it's a joy to everyone around you. And to shut yourself down, it's actually being selfish. Like people are not going to get to know you, to get to know the real you, the happy you, to the energetic you. And if you have a voice, if you want to speak, if you want to put out a book, a podcast, anything, then don't let your fear stand you down, essentially. Don't let your fear prevent other people from getting the knowledge that may help them. Maybe just one word, one voice, one sentence would be able to switch somebody's trajectory. So don't let your fear, don't be selfish, and don't let your fear stop you from doing what you want to do. Right, so does that sound like a good summary of what we talked about?
Great summary. That is it. Fear is not your friend. Do not let fear hold you back.
Accept fear as just being human. And then push through and lean in and jump into the fire. Accept the challenge. So, and that's how you're going to grow. I think that was really fantastic. Some of the questions that, audience can start asking right after this, just take one questions and start asking, or think of just one passion or one activity that you loved and just, look on Google and schedule. Say if you like dancing, look up the dancing events next time, painting, look it up. Or if you always wanted to go work out or lift weights, Google the closest gym next to you right now, right after this.
Exactly. Yes.
And Valerie, do you have anything, any parting words for the audience at all? If there were to do one thing, I know we talked about so many things. Do you think that's one most important thing that they get out of this episode?
I would love for you, whoever is listening here, to take 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes of just quiet time, whatever you have, whether you're driving or just find a time, right after listening to this, that you can just really get with your thoughts and just ask yourself the questions, am I living my best life? Am I happy? Am I leaving a legacy that I want to leave? Like you talked about, what are my friends going to say about me? Am I, walking in my fullest potential? And if you doubt any of this, or you have questions, or you're not even sure, then I would just begin to start asking yourself questions, begin to start investing in yourself and get to know you better than you would any other girlfriend or anybody you want to start dating or anything like that. Just start asking yourself the questions. Really make it a priority to know you better than you ever have known yourself. So that would be my thing. I would really want someone to just take some time to start asking themselves questions. And like I said, just we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes when the questions get asked, we don't even know how to answer them. And if you can't answer the question, take some time to think on it. Like figure it out. Like you don't want to just say, well, I don't know. I can't figure out the answers to that. Then ask yourself, well, why can't I figure it out? The questions keep building on each other, So there's always you're going to get to a question that you're going to be able to answer. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. And sometimes people have talked about there's actually 7 levels of whys before you get to the actual answer.
That's so true. I was going to say that, but I didn't want to go down another rabbit hole, but that is exactly true. So a lot of times when someone's like, I'm just angry all the time because XYZ, that's usually not even the reason you're angry. It really isn't. You might be angry by the moment, but when you, like you said, you get those 7 questions and you get to the root of it. And then when you get to the root of it, then that's when things can start changing in your life. And that's life coaching. So invest in yourself.
Any like resources or websites or podcasts or books that you found that to be helpful for you in your journey, or that you would recommend the audience to go take a look after this?
So I do have my book, but I will tell you the book that I just read, and I have to say this has been my favorite book that I've ever read, and I have a podcast, and it's Mel Robbins' The 5-Second Rule. It's the 5-second rule. And she talks about retraining your brain to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Like, don't think about it. You're sitting there in an office meeting and you have the answer to the next project they're working on, but you're too scared to say something. In your brain, you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 talk. And if you don't, you miss the moment. And she really talks about this in the book. And even like getting my house clean sometimes, I'm so exhausted because I work all the time. I'd be like, hey, Valerie, we're setting the timer for 2 hours, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And it sounds silly, but I say it out loud and I go and I'll get 2 hours done and I'll get all this stuff done and I want to keep going. But her book has literally the way that she wrote it and spoke on. I just think that there's a lot of science behind it, a lot of science behind our thoughts, our words, the things that we do. So I think that's just kind of what we spoke about here. If that was one book, that's a great starting point for sure. And then of course I have, my book, Maksymizing Life, that it's kind of talks about the things that I went through in finding myself. There's different stages that I went through, and I talk about it in the book, to go from being completely broken to completely thriving. It's like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, thank you. And what about the websites where people can find you on social media?
My website is maksimizinglife.com. And then my book is Maksymizing Life. I don't know if you can see that, but I just made it easy. So on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, it's Maksymizing Life. I have the same handle on all of it, just so people can find it easier.
And how do you spell it? Because I know it's a different spelling.
Right. So it's Maksym and then Izing Life. So Maksymizing Life.
Awesome. And you have a coaching program too. So for anybody who's like gone through these exercises, if you would like more help, please contact Valerie to see if she can help you obtain your superpower, kind of realize your superpower. And regarding that book, I would love to read it because I employ a similar thing, like in my cold showers in the morning. I've gotten to the point where I just turn it on. And before, like, if I can't hesitate. I just like go in. Just go in.
Yes, that's so good. Yes, that movie, that's the show Limitless on Disney too. He was talking about that too. I know Tony Robbins does the cold shower. It's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, I will send you a book. So text me your address. I will get one out tomorrow to you.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
I'll sign it too, and I'll send it to you so you have it.
Okay. So awesome. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your time here. The reason, I wanted to bring you here is just because, my first 2 episodes was on imposter syndrome and self-worth. And I just feel like that's really the foundation of everything. If you want to succeed in finance, in your physical health, in your relationships, without working on yourself, you can't do any of those. Without being the full authentic you are not going to have the energy to achieve whatever you want to achieve in life. So that's why I wanted to bring you on. And I thank you so much for coming on the show, Valerie.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So remember that all the show notes, all the resources we talked about will be on itsnotrocketscienceshow.com. And also over there, you can sign up to the 7-day video course on productivity. It will also be in the Facebook group at Tsung MD as well. And so just remember that that really applies to the show. I talk about this all the time, but just remember that everything that we need is within us now. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review in iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a private VIP day for a health and life makeover with Dr. Tsung herself. Then be sure to head on over to itsnotrocketscienceshow.com and pick up your free gift from Dr. Tsung. Then join us on the next episode.